So I just have been having a conversation with a family member who has shared with me some interesting information. For those of you who've been watching our story and have seen the other videos talking about how we ended up being no contact with my husband's parents, and then separately and unrelated, ended up being no contact with my parents and leaving the church that I had grown up in, you'll remember that some of the things, there were these patterns I noticed in my family of origin with specific members. Not all of them. There are some who I'm still in contact with and who have shown thus far by their actions that they are safe people. But what I am discovering after talking with another family member is that many of the unsafe behaviors that it took me years to notice had been going on for a long time before. In talking with this family member, I found that this family member had similar interactions, similar experiences with other members of the family, and had heard things being said about myself and my husband from other members of the family, which are the same things that were flung in our faces when we were getting ready to leave. And I'm just kind of sitting with that. I'm trying to sit with the shock of, and the betrayal of the fact that I only really came to terms with how cruel and abusive some of my parents and one of my brothers and some other family members were. I only came to terms with that. I'm just sitting with the shock and the betrayal and the recognition that the behaviors I noticed in my family of origin have been going on for many years before I noticed them. I have evidence now from another family member that the same things that are being said about me now have actually been said for years prior to when I finally recognized the abusive behavior and decided to excuse myself from it by going no contact. And it's always hard to recognize that someone you trusted and loved has treated you abusively. But I think the thing that's also a little scary and more devastating in some ways is the realization that not only were those kinds of behaviors and those kinds of accusations being thrown around behind our backs and out of our earshot for years before we finally heard them publicly, but also the recognition that these family members, these abusive family members, have been fomenting division in our family for a really long time, because these were things they said to other members of the family, trying to create sides on this issue, trying to divide us from the rest of the family through slandering us and through saying things. One of them was that my husband was the one who's brainwashing and abusing the family, which is exactly what my brother has been doing for years, and my parents and my grandmother and some other family members. And that accusation has been thrown around by other members of the family out of our earshot for the past 5 or 6 years at least, maybe longer, probably longer, because that's when it finally became clear. But it's shocking to recognize how calculated it was. To recognize that the division that we finally recognized and the choice to go no contact that's being blamed on us has actually been created in the background by other family members for years before we recognized it and decided to take action. And that's a really hard recognition to come to, that my choice to give others the benefit of the doubt, my choice to not gossip, to not share what I was seeing and to assume the best of people, that kindness and that approach to life of thinking the best of others and assuming the best and assuming that hurtful things were not being said deliberately, I was totally mistaken on that. They were deliberate, and I have the evidence now. And that's a really hard recognition to come to. And I'm not sharing it here because I'm trying to say bad things about people. That isn't my point. I know that it would have been very hard for me to believe that this was possible, that someone, one, who claimed to be a Christian, and two, who claimed to love me and care about me, could deliberately do these kinds of things behind my back and could say terrible things about myself, about my husband, about our family, simply because they disagree with choices we're making. And that's really the definition of family enmeshment, is when you can't make a choice that your family disagrees with without them thinking it's their business. And I never realized how much that was a factor in my family, but talking with this other family member, it has become very clear to me that that's been going on for years, and that the gossiping and the cutting down and the slandering and the accusing people of stuff behind their backs, accusing us of things behind our backs and saying bad things. And they've said terrible things about this family member. This family member has been the black sheep forever. And the irony of that is that my family created the black sheep, because that's how they have described this person forever, and have pushed this person out and have isolated this person and have refused to see what was really going on. And the only reason I now have the evidence I have is because I've been close to that person, and we finally started talking about how grieved and how sad we were about stuff that had happened and how hurt we'd been, and we realized we had been hurt by the same behaviors, that our family had been doing the same things to each of us separately and without our knowledge. It's so ironic, and it's so heartbreaking, and it's also such a deep betrayal to recognize that people you trusted and people who you treated the way you were taught to treat people, with kindness, with respect, and to give them the benefit of a doubt, and to not assume the worst, and to not say negative things about them, to finally recognize and know that those very things are what prevented you from seeing the terrible things they were doing to you in the background where you didn't know and you didn't see it. It's just a really hard betrayal, and it's also really good confirmation that I didn't end up no contact with my family because it's where I wanted to go. It's because this is where they've wanted it to go. And the only reason I'm still hearing anything about it is because me finally choosing to set boundaries on abusive behavior and not let it come near me anymore makes them look bad. And so they have to keep telling themselves these stories about how terrible we were, like stories with no evidence. And yet people have chosen to believe this because it matches what they want to believe, so that they don't have to look at themselves. And that's really hard. It's hard to realize that because of my beliefs as a Christian, those same beliefs have been taken and used to cause great harm with people I care about and love. And all the while, they're continuing to say it's my fault, that we're the ones who made this choice, when I have clear evidence that they've been lobbying for this for years. And yeah, just it's shocking, it's grieving, and but it's also very validating, because now I know that nothing I did caused them to make this choice. They had already made the choice long before I got to the point of being done with the behavior. So yeah, just a little follow-up there on what we've been through.